Yeah. Well, you'll see.
Yeah, I'll see.
Yeah, it'll make sense, but you'll see.
Sometimes I like just to hit the start recording button because I do enjoy like just it starting and we're in the middle of a conversation or something like that. I feel like it makes us authentic. Like if in the theater of the mind, if the listener is like walking into like a comic book store, they're walking into something mid conversation.
Right. Could you imagine us trying to script this stuff? You know what I mean?
We've written scripts before. I'm sure we could do something.
Yeah, but it's all, it all comes, most of it's so fucking off the wall and nonsensical that you're like, imagine sitting down and write this.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Smark Avengers. My name is Corey. With me are Dylan and John. And we had a conversation about some stuff that you're not going to hear because we're going to cut it all out. So just imagine what we were talking about instead.
Something magical.
Yeah. Though, because I said we cut it out, people are going to think it was like racist or something.
Well, then you shouldn't have said any of this.
Well,
Cut this bit out too.
No. People, they've been with us for, if you count the last volume, they've been with us for over 10 episodes. They should know us by now.
You say they, like it's like a big audience.
The guy from Poland should know us by now.
Approximately the same audience as AEW Rampage.
Yep, exactly. Which means we theoretically get on TV at 10 o'clock on Friday nights.
We could fill a quarter of a stadium.
So anyway, thank you for joining us. We've had some really interesting episodes as of late. And I think this is going to, we've not done one of these in a hot minute where we kind of just pick some random stuff with a common theme. So we've done stuff like who's your favorite C and D list villain, and like what's your favorite like weird superpowers you've ever encountered, and those were like vaguely positive. But not everything in life is positive. Sometimes we have bad days. We have dark days. We have days where maybe we don't feel like getting out of bed anymore. And when I think of that, what makes me feel better is when I talk about characters that I feel are fucking overrated. So that's the gimmick this week. Dylan and John and I have picked out a handful of characters that personally we find to be kind of overrated. We have not told each other what those characters are, so maybe we will have some disagreements along the way, and that should, make for a good time listening. So does anyone have a preference as to who would go first?
I mean, can I do one? Because I have like a load. I have loads.
Yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
So the one I alluded to off microphone earlier to my colleagues here was one that it'll make sense when I say it out loud. And I feel like we kind of need to talk about this guy because we've talked about him in the past. He's appeared on the show. I feel like we need to talk about how overrated the Flash is because after doing that Flash episode, I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. They bend over backwards to give this one fucking guy all of this stuff. Like that's ridiculous.
Can I ask you a question as to which Flash in particular you're referring to?
The fact that there are so many Flashes and they all are incredibly overpowered and nobody seems to mind kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Well, I will counter that and tell you that until I went through those list of powers, I think both of you just assumed all he did was run fast.
Right, but don't you think that like having this one character, like why would they put all that effort into putting so many different powers and stuff like this into one guy, unless they either A, were really trying to like make him overrated, or B, couldn't think of a better way to get out of the story they'd written than to just invent a new power for him to have. And I assume that the people we're talking about are professionals. They wouldn't half-ass a storyline and just make up something cheap in order to get out of it. So the other possibility is that they just kept adding stuff to this guy because they really wanted him to be a big deal, and it didn't catch on with the people. But the creators themselves tried to make this guy. The fact that they kept pushing him makes him overrated in my book.
Can I counter argument for you for just a
I
moment?
guess.
All right. So Jay Garrick, the first Flash, when he was around in the 1940s, he literally only had like two powers. But when they bumped him back up into the main continuity, that's when they started giving him the other shit. Because at that point, all of the Flash's powers were the equivalent, and it was like, well, we can't just have this guy's thing. He runs fast. We got to make him on par
But
because he's
they
also called the
they
Flash.
they could though. I don't see why they
They
couldn't.
could, but they didn't.
Right,
I want to
exactly.
blame Jeff Johns for that personally, but I just like blaming Jeff Johns for stuff.
Why
The
not?
other thing I want to counter argument with is no, you were absolutely correct in that it was the second thing of we are coming up with new powers for him to get out of whatever the storyline is, and this was all back in the Silver Age in the 1960s because the writers then were really big on like making little science facts and stuff. So like they would introduce something in physics and then like the Flash would have to break physics in order to like save the day or something. But yeah, no, I agree on that thing. It was absolutely the latter of we're going to invent a problem and then invent a power to get out of the problem because it's the 1960s.
But that's it. Like, there's no reason for it to be the Flash. Like, they could have used that storyline for somebody else that would be better suited for that. But no, they just kept going with the Flash. They're really trying to make the Flash a thing. Then he had his TV show that apparently was really good, but the guy in it was a dick. And then they made a film with the dick guy, and that didn't go over well either. Seems like they're really trying to push this Flash narrative on me, and I'm not happy about it.
I think the
I've had
guy
enough.
in the TV show wasn't a dick. It was just the guy in the movie.
Grant
Oh,
Gustin.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seemed okay. Seemed like a good kid.
anyway, the Flash sucks.
Yeah.
So your overrated character is just the concept of the Flash, it sounds like.
I think he is overrated. I don't see why they put so much effort into this one guy. You
Yeah,
know?
I
I
think
you know,
I wouldn't have like even considered him for this until we did the Flash episode a
Yep.
few weeks ago.
Yeah. I would have let it
I
slide,
mean,
but
I'll tell you
now I'm like, he seems like a real piece of work.
I like Wally West. I think he's a very fun character. Like he's really written well, and I don't think his full extent of his powers are really shown all the time. But it is frequently usually mentioned that he is the fastest Flash.
And
I
he can
like Bart
fly, and
Allen.
he
It
can breathe
is
underwater. He can talk to insects.
they didn't do that stuff. He's also the one that was the intergalactic space tag team champion with the Omega Bam Man.
Oh, okay. They put a
He's got
title
he's
on this guy, and he's not overrated. Come on, man.
they put him up. They strapped him up.
Can't get a guy over just by putting the title on him.
No, I mean the problem is he keeps staying home, and they come up to him with ideas, and he goes, "That's not gonna work for me, brother."
Okay.
John, you want to go next?
Yeah. So my guy is another guy who you're probably gonna disagree with, Corey, because I've gone
It feels like
for
bullying at this point.
I went for Superman.
Oh, fuck off!
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I should probably preface this by saying I've never actually read a Superman comic. Like I've read him in other stuff, so maybe this is just
I will.
like
I will tell you. Read Josh Williamson's Superman run. That is out right now. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I feel like it's a good representation of the character. But
okay.
go ahead and make an enemy of me by continuing.
Well, just from the outside looking in, he feels like such a boring character. Like the big boy scout with all these powers, like he's practically invincible, faster than a speeding bullet. He can fly. He's got X-ray vision. Can shoot lasers out of his eyes. He's got like a freeze breath or whatever. It's like Jesus Christ. It's like the Flash. He's basically too
Yeah.
overpowered.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like I say, he's just because he's such a sort of do-gooder as well. Like there's no other side to him. There's no sort of nothing interesting, at least from my point of view, to like grab onto. He's just like, okay, yeah, he's an alien. Like it's the immigrant story, like coming in and landing in a alien land and kind of having to you know, build yourself up and acclimate to his new surroundings and stuff. But I don't know, he just comes across as such a dweeb.
You know what?
So
I entirely agree. 100%. That's how I feel about
this feels
Superman
like
too.
these are two Marvel guys who are just gonna talk shit about DC for an hour. All right, I
Whoa,
see
whoa,
what's
whoa,
going
whoa,
on.
whoa, whoa, whoa. We're talking shit about the two most overrated characters in DC, and also, let's be honest here, we definitely have some Marvel guys on our list. You could,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
could put a lot of money on that. But like, you look at a guy like Superman again. He's invincible. You can't shoot him with bullets. You can't hit him in a tree. And he could fly. He could breathe underwater. He could do everything, right? And then you're like, well, and I guess it's a testament to a lot of writers who have been able to do this, but like a lot of it, just like John said, from the outside looking in, you're like, how do you do a really good, compelling story with a guy where you know he can't really? There's no real jeopardy here.
Yeah.
You know, he's gonna always all. It's like, you know, to be Smarky again, it's a John Cena thing.
Hmm.
Not only is John Cena Superman, Superman is John Cena. They're one and the same, and they're both good, but like, are they that good? You
Can
know what I
I can
mean?
I can I give you the counter argument now?
Yeah, go
Uh,
for it.
okay, if you must.
So this is going to be the big difference between Superman and the Flash. Superman does have stated weaknesses, and it's not just kryptonite. One of the other weaknesses is that Superman is entirely dependent on radiation from a yellow sun. If the sun is blocked out for whatever reason, he starts to get weaker and loses powers. The other thing is because Superman is not of Earth, he has a weakness to magic. So that is always a big problem for him. That's actually a thing going on in Action Comics currently, is that Bizarro, because he is the opposite of Superman, actually has a predilection towards magic and has figured out how to use it. So because of that, he's been able to basically make Superman's life hell by converting Earth into a new Bizarro world. So
Hi.
by magic,
Well,
he has
that's all
accessed
I need to
magic.
hear.
Yeah, it's magic. I mean, how does Doctor Strange do shit? Magic.
You know, he doesn't just like suddenly turn the world upside down.
No, but that's kind of the thing. Is like he got access to this magic he had no business getting, and because he doesn't understand the limits of it, because Bizarro is functionally a moron, he basically went too far and was fucked things up because he didn't know what he was doing.
Okay.
It's like if you give like a toddler a handgun, if they don't know it's a real gun, they're gonna shoot it, and like they're this is an American problem, obviously, because
I
there
was
have
just
been
about
many
to
stories
say,
of people getting killed by toddlers with guns.
who would ever do that? Who would ever give a toddler access to a handgun?
so yeah, that's kind of like that's one aspect of this. The other counter argument is that a lot of Superman storylines involves control because he is so powerful. That is an aspect of his character, is that he has to keep things in check, and that kind of pressure of like having to be perfect all the time and not letting his emotions get the better of him, because if he does, he causes a lot of destruction. That's why there's so many evil Superman stories of like what happens if Superman like gets angry and loses control. Like he fucks shit up really hardcore and no one can really do anything about it.
Mm,
I mean, you're making a compelling argument, but also
yeah.
like they give him way too many powers and it's annoying.
So I will tell you, this is an actual true statement. Superman, when he first started out, did not have as many powers as he did. So he could
Right.
not fly. That's why the statement of able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. He could just jump really high.
Hmm.
He got the power of flight because Fawcett Comics at the same time was putting out Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, and Shazam had that ability to fly. So they were like, "Oh, we have to stay competitive. We can't let this character be seen as more powerful than our character." So that's when Superman started to get those powers. Is they were trying to compete with Fawcett Comics over the Captain Marvel story, because Captain Marvel got to be more popular because Captain Marvel was a kid. And we were talking about like in the Robbins episode about the wish fulfillment and having an author avatar be like the little kid who's going to read Batman because they can identify as Robin. Fawcett did it like 100% by having the little kid be able to turn into the adult superhero.
Right, but I also don't think it's a good model to say this guy exists purely because they were just trying to make the most powerful superhero they could, and then they did, and then didn't know what to do with him after that. You know, like, because that seems like what happened. They were competing
With
against
who?
these other people. They're like, oh yeah, well our guy can shoot lasers and can fly and then is bulletproof. And then after a while, once they've listed all the stuff he can do, they're like, fuck, now what do we do?
There's
Oh,
a
I
ton of
know.
Superman stories. What are you talking about? He's existed for like almost 100 years.
Yeah,
You're
no, I
acting
know
like
that,
they
but I
made
mean,
him and
like
shelved him.
I mean, what you were saying that they were competing against Shazam.
Yeah.
And they were adding more powers to him until they got to the point where, like, well, now he's super powerful. He is the most powerful superhero of all time. And now they're like, well, fuck. Now we've got this guy who's just crazy powerful. And
Yeah, that's why
now
they
what?
invented kryptonite for that reason.
Exactly.
And then they
That's what I
invented
mean. They were like, now.
they created a problem and then created a solution that made sense of like what's he weak to? He's weak to this thing from his home planet. And then there's like, well, what else can he be weak to? They're like, oh, if you fuck with the sun or you put him in deep space, he loses his powers because he needs radiation from a yellow sun. And you also run into the problem of like, well, magic comes from Earth because it's all about like the natural things that are going on in the planet, like the elements and energies there. Like he's not from Earth, so therefore he should be weak to it.
I still think it's a bit of a stretch to have, because then again you're saying the major issues with this guy are going to be either kryptonite or somebody fucking with the sun, which I'm going to be honest with you, dude, doesn't often come up that much, even in comics.
We're about to have a solar eclipse, damn it. What do you mean it doesn't come up often?
So then whenever you have Mr. Sunfucker coming along, you're like, okay, this is going to be a Superman problem, I think.
The sun fucker. The man who fucks the sun. A lot of burns on him.
That's gonna be a tough one to draw for the thumbnail.
I just want to imagine us like the thumbnail is just us looking on in horror and like the silhouette of somebody humping the sun.
Somebody fucking the sun. And then Superman's like, I ain't touching that.
I know that's out of my jurisdiction.
That's my one weakness. Sun fucking. We're like, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. You got all the other powers, but you can't be immune to somebody fucking the sun. That one took a quick turn.
Yeah.
It did. It always does.
Yeah.
It always does.
Yeah.
So my first one I feel like will be controversial. But this is a
Superman?
character. No. It's certainly not Superman. My first person I find really overrated is Kitty Pryde.
Okay.
Mm.
That's interesting.
I think Kitty, like there's so many authors that have like this love affair with her that the only thing I can think of is that when they were teenagers, they had a crush on Kitty because she was like the teenage member of the X-Men.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, Kitty Pryde's powers is she can walk through walls. And then they modified, it's like, oh, well, she could do other stuff like, put her hand through people and whatnot. And like, I get it, but like, I feel like she's so like overused. So like, what I mean by that, and I'm not going to count it against Claremont because he invented the character and, he can do whatever he wants. But like, Brian Michael Bendis had a big love affair with her. Jerry Duggan absolutely had a big love affair with her. Jason Aaron, when he was doing Wolverine and the X-Men, same deal. And probably, and this one in hindsight, really kind of problematic. Joss Whedon for Astonishing X-Men, where she was essentially the main character. So like, I just find Kitty to be really, as a character, kind of uninteresting. And I feel like it's that weird Warren Worthington thing where we were talking about how they kind of just kept giving Archangel new powers. They keep giving her like new stuff. So like she was trained by a ninja master and she's actually an expert assassin and she's also a pirate queen and she like has a ship and a crew and they just keep giving her more shit. And like that's a life lived. If like, yeah, I was the teenage member of the X-Men. Also, I became a ninja. Also, I became a pirate. Also, I got trapped in a giant speeding bullet across the universe.
And she was
Also-
in the Guardians of the Galaxy as well.
Yeah. She was dating. She was like gonna get married to Star-Lord or something.
Yeah.
She was gonna get married to Colossus.
That's what I was gonna say. Also, I fucked a big metal guy.
Yeah. So like,
So
there's a lot.
so Corey, you're saying that
Yeah.
it's really irritating when some bland character gets loads and loads of added powers on top of them.
No, I think it's
Kind of
bland.
like
I
the
think it's
Flash and
unfortunate
Superman.
when a bland character gets a lot of storylines by a lot of different writers in a team book.
But the thing
Oh,
is,
it's not
with,
like the Flash at all, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm
with
not saying,
Kitty,
I'm not
though,
arguing against the Flash. You think overrated the Flash is. Superman's the first fucking superhero. They wouldn't exist without him.
I'd say with Kitty, though, at least like we've witnessed her growing up. Like when she was introduced, she was a teenager, and now she's sort of progressed and like she's still like finding her role, I guess, to a certain extent, which is maybe why she's gone down all these different paths and tried all these different things, trying to see what sticks.
Well, I think that's kind of Corey's point, is that like I agree with the her growing up, and we see her going down the paths and stuff. But then also, like Corey said, she's been around for so long that like if she hasn't found her proper path yet, like what are we doing? We're just making stuff up to suit the storyline again. Or that at some point she needs to have like a defined character. Otherwise,
But-
you're just
I don't know, because like then you don't want to keep it static. There needs to
Yeah.
be change. There needs to be evolution. There needs to be like some sort of forward momentum. Like you can't just stay the same forever. Although, well, in theory you can't, but then I guess there's lots of characters that do that. But
Superman, for example.
I'm not engaging in this conversation anymore. I've already blown up.
Oh, this is my favorite episode yet.
Oh dear. But yeah, no, like you said, that's just kind of my opinion on Kitty Pryde. Is I feel like she's a character that gets like a lot of opportunities in a team book, and there's so many X-Men characters out there, and for a long time it felt like, so it went like Kitty Pryde, Jubilee, and then they kept trying to find like Wolverine's new kid sidekick,
Yeah.
and like it feels like Jubilee just kind of got left behind entirely, and then Kitty Pryde was popping up, and like she's the most important X-Men now. Like even like the storyline now, or previously to before they started like wrapping up the Krakoa stuff, like all the X-Men for the most part got fucking wiped out on Krakoa, and she's one of the few remaining, and now she's like a cold, bitter assassin and sneaking around because she's going into her ninja training. It's like she was a mouthy fucking pirate not even 2 months ago.
Mhm.
Right. Couldn't they kind of just keep her being a pirate? Wouldn't that be cool?
The story called for it, and it was the same writer. Like that was the really irritating part. Is Jerry Duggan did that. That was his decision.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I get that. Maybe not the wisest of moves.
Not really. So Dylan, you want to go up next with your second?
Yeah. Speaking of Kitty Pryde, I'm gonna pick Wolverine.
Really?
Yeah. I think Wolverine is probably the most overrated X-Men ever. He's everywhere. It's just all Wolverine. It's just, I don't know why. He's just like a small Canadian dude. And they're like, no, he's cool because he's got claws. And I'm like, it's pretty easy to be the most kick-ass member of a team whenever most of you is made out of metal and you can't die. You know what I mean? Like, of course you're going to be the one in there in the middle of a fight because you're the easiest one to put into that fight. You know what I mean? I think he's like super overrated. And I get, in a way where you're like, Kitty Pryde's kind of like bland and faceless and doesn't really have an identity. If you think about who Wolverine is, he's like this gruff kind of, no nonsense, character. And he has there's no, only Wolverine is that character. You know what I mean? Only Wolverine gets to be that kind of guy. Whenever, surely somebody else would be a little bit of a gruff, angry loner. And then, like you said, he always seems to end up being the one. the guy who's like 100 years old always ends up being the one hanging out with like
Teenage
really,
girls.
really young
Yeah.
girls. And then he's like, no, I'm gonna take this like 16-year-old kid off around the world for an adventure. Don't worry about us. And they're like, oh, that's totally fine. He does that all the time. You
He
know,
certainly
like,
does.
is this okay? Or is it,
I mean, I
you know what I
get
mean?
why he does it. I get why the
We
writers
all
have him
know
do
why he
it
does
because
it,
the character
Corey.
is antisocial, and it's like, oh, see, here's like his like he has like a soft spot for like helping out like like young kids. He's giving them practical advice. Like he's not just like mothering them or whatever. But like when you keep going to that well, it does start to feel a little weird.
Right. And so like I don't know how or why it was that Wolverine out of all the X-Men was like the one everybody was like, he's the best one. To me, I think like if you talk to anybody in the street about the X-Men, good money says well the first one they're gonna say is Wolverine. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Like what? Just because he's got metal claws, you know? Like
Well, there's like different aspects to his personality as well. Like he's got his mysterious past, which for a long time he wasn't sure of, like, like what memories were real and what were fake and implanted in his head. But then there's like his sort of berserker rage as well. Like he's constantly trying to like sort of stop himself going back into like a feral state basically. And yeah, like, and the fact he's like this like loner character as well, and but he's in a team book basically with the rest of the
right.
X-Men. He's
Yeah.
got to try and reconcile those two aspects of his like his life as well. So
Constantly hitting on his teammate's wife in front of him.
yeah.
Yeah, like hanging out with all these like teenagers and then also being like, I really want to fuck this lady right here. The lady can read my mind and knows absolutely 100% that I want to fuck her.
Mm.
I want to fuck her.
She
And
doesn't
I'm
really
not
shut me
gonna,
down either.
yeah, and I'm absolutely gonna tell Cyclops to his face that I want to fuck his wife.
Oh, yeah,
I think I
no.
made a pretty good point, pretty good case.
Yeah. Well, the Wolverine stuff is fine. I think people just really liked a badass rebel, and that's why he started to get so much like attention in his own solo series back in the day. And like the mysterious backstory left so many opportunities for storylines and stuff to come about. So I mean, I get why people were like using him a lot. But I think the worst thing they ever did was they tried to give him a definitive origin. Why?
Mhm.
Why? I
Right.
Yeah.
like that.
Ruins the
Why
mystery.
would you waste that?
Yeah,
So
I
that's
think
cool.
as well he's been more like overexposed and overrated. Like the
well, he
amount of
was also
books he was in was just
yeah.
ridiculous at one
Yeah,
point.
And he
yeah.
was the main
Right.
character of the first Wolverine, like the first X-Men movie, like X-Men, a team book, and he's like the only one that was presented as really mattering.
Hmm.
Right. See? Overused. Overrated. Doesn't warrant all of the I agree with like the amount of solo books Wolverine's had. You're like he's getting a lot of attention right now. You know, you couldn't pick another one of the 300 X-Men to, you know, talk about. It's got to be Wolverine. Like why are people so intent on reading more stories about Wolverine? You know, how much
Yeah.
more shit can we make up? And there's a guy. He's like, oh, he's a ninja too, and he has one eye, and he is a barman, and you know, all this other fucking stuff. Just I don't know. I think it's unnecessary.
I feel like when they introduced Gambit, he like to me he took over that like, oh, this is the cool loner kind of guy. Because like
Right.
he's Wolverine with charisma.
But he felt more fun though.
Yeah, he was much more likable. He's more of a
Yeah,
scamp.
he was. He was a lovable scamp, you know. And that's what I always would say about Gambit and Wolverine. Like people, Gambit's my favorite X-Man, but everybody else would pick Wolverine. And I'm like, listen, man, who's more hardcore in a fight? You know, you're going up against fucking 70-foot robot that shoots lasers out of its hands, and you have a metal skeleton and you can't be hurt. Obviously, you're gonna do pretty good. But how badass is it if you're just a guy in a big trench coat and your weapons are a stick and a pack of cards and you're gonna fight that robot? That's ballsy. You know what I
I mean,
mean?
everything you touch, you can explode. That's pretty handy,
It's cool, you
The
know?
bigger the item, the bigger the explosion.
Yeah, you know? and yet he chooses a pack of cards just because he just couldn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? That's the kind of guy Gambit is. I admire that. You know.
So
If either of you guys pick Gambit, by the way, I'm gonna go to your house and.
John, go ahead.
So my second pick is Gambit. No, I'm only joking. My second pick is the Punisher.
Oh.
Who, I mean, in theory, it's an interesting character. Like the sort of veteran who comes home and then like sees his wife and kids killed in front of him and then decides to wage a one-man war on crime to get revenge. But then, like, the closer you look at it, the more sort of like there's only one Punisher story ever. It's always him just like going after criminals and like
Shooting them.
yeah, killing them basically.
Yep.
And it's
Well,
like
and he was introduced as like a Spider-Man villain too.
yeah.
That's
And
like the weirdest part.
that's the thing though, he's become sort of like this anti-hero over the last 40 years or whatever. Well, probably 50 years now, but yeah, he's become like such a symbol for the wrong reasons. Like he's
Mhm.
seen as such a cool character because he's going around murdering people all the time.
Did you see any of that stuff they did with the Punisher and Frank Castle?
I saw they made him into the leader of the Hand at one point, and then I don't know how that resolved
Okay,
itself.
so they brought his wife back from the dead, and
They
then
ruin his motivation.
so then his wife found out what he'd been doing while she was dead, and like
Punishing.
was
Why do they call you the
horrified.
Punisher? Like, don't.
Don't worry about it. Well, and then she revealed that she was actually going to divorce him.
Uh,
Like they just straight up character assassination on Frank Castle. They're like, everything about this character you think is cool, fuck you, we're undoing it. And I think he's like now like on an alien planet, and like he's totally given up the name Punisher and like the symbolism, and he's like helping kids out on this alien planet.
He's Mr. Sweetie Pie now. That's his new
Yeah.
name. That's really funny. I like how you're like everything that you thought was cool about the Punisher is gone. Like there was one thing that people thought was cool about the Punisher, and that was gun. That was the only thing that people thought was cool about the Punisher was just he had guns. Like literally, that's right.
I always love it though.
It's that
I
in the
always
cool
love it
symbol.
Well, I always loved it when people fucked around with the Punisher and like how angry his fans would get about it. Like, do you guys remember Frankencastle?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that was awesome to see people freak out about Frankencastle. Do you know that story, Dylan?
Vaguely, it sounds kind of familiar. I think have we talked about that? I feel like we have
So
talked about that.
I don't know. I don't think we did. We've never talked about it. So like,
Mm.
it was during the Dark Reign, and Daken like fought Punisher and cut him up into pieces.
Yeah.
And then like people like fucking weirdo monster people like put him back together, and he was like this undead corpse called that was referred to as Frankencastle.
I mean, it's a fresh twist on an old character, right?
It is, but boy, for fucking Punisher fans only want what you said, guy with gun. And if you
Guns.
mess with that formula, boy.
But that's the thing, like a guy with guns who just does the same thing like for 30 years, like at some point there's no what are you reading here? It's just a guy, he's got a gun, he shoots somebody. Next issue, the guy with a gun, he shoots somebody else. Like you know what I mean? Like there's no, he's not like a fun guy like Deadpool or something like that who had stuff he could do and stories he could tell. Punisher was always so straight laced and like one dimensional that there wasn't really a whole lot of other stuff he could do, and yet people are still buying that shit. Like why?
Yeah.
So I agree with that one. That's it. But once you meet your case, you're like, you know what? I agree with that.
Did you ever see the comic where Spider-Man fights Punisher and basically like beats the living hell out of him and reveals like, I've been taking it easy on you every time that we fight? every time. And like if I wanted to, I could fucking end you.
But he could though.
Yeah, it was like it reminded me of when Peter Parker fought the Kingpin and just beat the hell out of him in front of all the prisoners in that
See,
jail.
I didn't like that
Mm.
though. I didn't like that because I feel like the Kingpin, like, because in comics lore, really, Spider-Man could absolutely beat the shit out of the Punisher. Because, like we said, the Punisher really just is a guy with a gun. If you take away his guns, he's got nothing. But the Kingpin,
But the
like that's,
Kingpin's just a big guy.
but that was part of his gimmick, was that like he wasn't just a big guy. He, like, it wasn't just fat; it was muscle. Like he was a strong, tough dude to take down.
I am
You
so
know.
surprised to hear you say this, despite how big a Spider-Man fan you are. Because
But I
like
think,
Spider-Man
yeah,
has enhanced strength and durability. Like,
right,
yeah, he's a big dude with muscle, but fucking so's Rhino, you know?
yeah, and it's tough for Spider-Man to take Rhino down too.
Yeah.
So
But I feel like that's always because Spider-Man, unless like enraged, is always like checking his punches, you know? Like, he's not trying
well,
to kill anybody.
well, that's why maybe he should. Maybe he should take a leaf out of the Punisher's book. Spider-Man with guns.
Spider-Man with guns.
Yeah.
So John, did you have any other thoughts about the Punisher before we move on? I know that Dylan and I kind of talked over you a good bit on that.
No. I mean, I pretty much said all I need to say about him. Really, he's one of those guys who I will never really understand the appeal of. Like beyond the basic concept, like yeah, he's just too one note for my liking.
I would agree.
Yep.
So my second one is one of the many Green Lanterns that are out there. And we talked about this before. In Green Lantern lore, there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of Green Lanterns. And each sector has their own one Green Lantern and like a backup Green Lantern. And Sector 2814 is the sector that contains Earth. And for whatever reason, we have the most Green Lanterns. So it's one Green Lantern and then their backup. And so we have Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, Simon Baz, and Jessica Cruz. To give you an idea, Sector 2814 contains looks like over 30 planets, including our solar system. And all six of these Green Lanterns come from Earth. So that's a thing. But the Green Lantern I'm going to pick out as who I think is overrated is Hal Jordan, who was the Green Lantern of the Silver Age and the Bronze Age before he went crazy with power because his hometown got nuked off the face of the planet, and he killed all the other Green Lanterns and became the Parallax. But in the same kind of realm where we're talking about how a certain character is just kind of boring, Hal Jordan to me is kind of boring. Like his gimmick before being a Green Lantern was he was a test pilot, and his whole deal is being like trying to live a life without fear because his father died in an accident, and how he's kind of a irresponsible guy and has relationship woes and whatnot. And a big part of the Green Lantern aspect is you have your ring, and your ring can create constructs of whatever you can imagine. So as a kid from the 90s, my favorite Green Lantern is Kyle Rayner, and Kyle Rayner was an artist. So Kyle Rayner would have these elaborate constructs, like super creative, super wild looking stuff. And Hal Jordan's best thing he could do is like he could make a big hand and a baseball bat and maybe like a catcher's glove. And
So he could play baseball against himself.
he played baseball against himself. But that's kind of the thing. So when Jeff Johns brought him back and redeemed him, and he was a hero again, he did the Flash thing where suddenly Hal Jordan was able to do all of this other elaborate Green Lantern shit that was kind of biting on Kyle Rayner's style. And I just think the character's pretty boring. The only person who I've ever wrote a compelling Green Lantern story for me was Grant Morrison. And Grant did a lot of really fun things with him, including trying and failing to pitch to DC that Green Lantern should be pansexual because a lot of his relationship are with aliens. And like, who's to say that the aliens fall under the gender binary of of like human beings? So like, why would you consider him heterosexual or straight or whatever?
I mean, that's logical, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
That
thought it was
totally
perfectly
makes
logical.
sense. Yeah.
And Hal Jordan had a really kind of creepy relationship with another character. Her name was
The sun fucker.
no, unfortunately not. Arisha Rab, who, for all intents and purposes, despite looking like an adult woman, or not she is an alien. I think in her species, she is like technically 13.
Uh-oh.
Oh dear.
Oh
Yeah, yeah,
no.
yeah.
We got a Wolverine
So
situation going on.
Yeah.
yeah. So Arisha Rab is like technically 13 years old. And she had a thing with Hal Jordan.
Why? Why do they have to go down that road? What's
Yeah,
wrong with these
so
comics writers? What's wrong with these guys?
Mhm.
yeah, 13 years of age, despite looking like an adult woman. Because aliens being aliens. But that's the reason that Hal Jordan, and in my opinion, is overrated, is because he's constantly pushed as like the greatest Green Lantern of all time, and like the most just and the most like important and whatnot. And I just it just
Even
all
though he
the other
turned
ones.
heel and
Yeah,
destroyed a city.
Right.
yeah, no. He
Unbelievable.
didn't destroy the city. He freaked out because the city got destroyed, but
Oh,
then he
sorry.
killed every other Green Lantern and took their rings and became super powerful.
Yeah.
But don't you think that adds to his character though? Doesn't it make him more interesting? He's not as bland as he was because then he
He
went
was
and
great
killed
as a
him.
villain for that reason. I
Yeah.
liked him as a villain. I just
Okay.
when Jeff Johns, when Jeff Johns brought him back, it was like Saint Hal Jordan. He's redeeming himself by being the
Okay.
most bland, boring guy in the world.
Okay.
He just had that like standard 1960s 50s job of like, oh, he's a test pilot. And I will appreciate the Green Lantern series that's out right now did kind of address that because he's on Earth and test pilots aren't really a thing anymore. So now he like flies drones.
Mm.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I just like you said, every other Green Lantern of Earth is infinitely more interesting. Kyle Rayner is an artist. John Stewart is like an architect and was in the military. Guy Gardner is just a loudmouth dickhead. You have like Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz, and they're both interesting in their own ways. And then there's Hal. His character is white guy.
Yeah, but other white guys really love that character though.
They certainly do.
They do.
That was Kyle Rayner had a lot of heat in the 90s because they went away from the Green Lantern Corps because Hal Jordan killed them all. And Kyle got his ring because a Guardian just said basically like, oh, you're the first human I see. You'll have to do. Whereas other Green Lantern is like chosen by the ring itself. So like they did a lot of really fun things with Kyle Rayner. Unfortunately, that did include killing his girlfriend and stuffing her in a refrigerator. But
Oh, that was that one?
yeah, that was Kyle's girlfriend that Major
Oh,
Force killed.
not so good. That
No,
part.
Mm.
no.
No.
But I mean, it did kind of lead to Gail Simone becoming a prominent figure in the comic book industry.
Well, yes, which
So
I mean, you make a compelling argument. I gotta say,
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with Green Lantern, but from what you said, like I kind of see why that, like you said, there's loads of Green Lanterns, and for them to like keep using that one there, and whatever, he seems to be like one of the most bland, not just like the most bland Green Lantern, but like one of the most bland characters is a strange choice. You
yeah.
know?
Well, and like you said, I don't know if we'd ever do the Smark Avengers kill Green Lantern, but I will tell you it's not going to be as complicated. If you separate him from his ring, he's pretty much just a dude.
And then the Punisher shoots him.
And the Punisher shoots him. Guy with gun.
Done.
Dylan, we're back around to you. What you got?
All right, so I'm gonna kind of go off the theme of the Punisher ish. If you think about what the Punisher was, which was a guy that was brought in as a villain that ended up being a strange anti-hero despite being a total dick and not a very good character. I'm gonna go. This one might cause a little bit of controversy with you guys. I'm gonna go with Venom. I like Venom, but like I never thought he was like that amazing of a character. Now I fucking hate him. I am fed up to the back teeth with symbiote shit. I just can't. I'm just fed up with it. But Venom was like a really interesting character that I think they were trying to capitalize on his sudden popularity whenever, what was he, the 80s, and even in the 90s. I think again, like, they went way too far with it. They had way too many solo series and mini series, and they put him in everywhere, and then they made him from like like, because Venom is, the whole point of Venom is he's a fucking asshole who hates Spider-Man, and then they turn that into like he's a guy with his own set of morals, and then they tried to do something with him, but that I didn't think they needed to do with him. He's supposed to be just this horrible guy that hates Spider-Man, because he has like the gimmick of Venom is great. Like, both the symbiote and Eddie Brock fucking hate Spider-Man. It's perfect. You combine the two of them, their raw hatred, and combats against Spider-Man's like natural goodness, and it should be like this really interesting, intricate kind of thing. There should be loads of stuff. And to be fair, the early Venom stories were really good. But then once you start taking them away, we kind of touched upon this when we talked about Venom, the film. If you take Venom away from Spider-Man, it doesn't really make any sense. And then because Venom is like specifically designed to really just hate Spider-Man, and you can try, and obviously you have to give him more character development and make him a more interesting character. But I feel like they went way too heavy with it. Like I said, too many new miniseries and too many different ideas and stuff. Like, there were a ton of solo series and stuff of Venom in the 80s and 90s, and they tried to make him into this anti-hero, which, and kind of like in wrestling, whenever they talk about like the tweeners of the cool heels or whatever, you're like, what you mean is you don't know how to write this guy, right?
Yeah.
That's what this means. It's not a real term. In comics, the whole point of it is you're supposed to have good guys and bad guys. If you have a bad guy that is good or a good guy that is bad, you're like, well, they're one or the other, like this. And Venom, as a guy that's supposed to be like a horrible, vicious murder, like he used to eat people's brains. That was his thing. And then they're like, oh, that's fun. Isn't that a funny thing for him to say? I think that Venom is just way too overhyped, way too overrated. And especially now, I don't know what the fuck they've been doing with him. Like I said, the symbiote stuff is it's just unreadable to me. It's just
Wasn't
garbage.
his kid Venom now?
Yeah.
Dylan Brock?
Yes, he is Venom now, and then Eddie Brock has become the new King in Black, I believe. Which is, basically he's the god of symbiotes now.
All right.
But I mean, I will say, because I was considering putting Venom on my list, but then I thought I quite like the fact that, like, over the last 5 years or whatever, they have tried doing something different with Venom and like expanding on the mythology of the symbiotes and like creating like a whole new corner of the Marvel universe out of it. Like it shows some progression, and even though it is like admittedly a far step away from like where the character started, and I get why, if you fell in love with Venom in his original carnation, how it can be quite off-putting to see him now sprouting wings and going off into space and
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, okay, it's very different, but I don't know. I quite like it. I've quite enjoyed the series I've been reading.
So
Fair
if I
enough.
could ask a question, Dylan, is it just Eddie Brock that you dislike? Because like there have been other Venoms
No,
recently. There's Mac
I mean,
Gargan, Flash
yeah,
Thompson.
I hated because again, the whole point of Venom is that Venom is the symbiote and Eddie Brock. That's what Venom is. Because when the symbiote was with Spider-Man, it was Spider-Man, and
Yeah.
then it moved to Eddie Brock, and that became Venom. And then they got the idea that it's the Venom symbiote. I'm like, well, how come when it moved to that guy, that's the name they kept? Surely, if it goes to Matt Gargan or to Flash Thompson, it's a different thing,
Well, to
right?
their credit, they did call Flash Thompson Agent Venom.
I don't think that's to their credit because they made Flash Thompson Venom
I don't know. I
to
liked
their
that series
detriment.
with Jeff Lemire. I thought that series was pretty good because it did
Mm.
like there was some pathos with the Flash Thompson character and like lying to his wife about what he was doing because we had to keep it a secret. It gave us that sick ass version of Jack O' Lantern as his like recurring villain.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I dug Jeff Lemire's Agent Venom.
I didn't really like any other Venom. I just because again, I think it's just them capitalizing on this name again. I'm like, it's more overhype. It's more, you know, overratedness for this one character. Like, why would they think it's a good idea for the Scorpion to become Venom?
You know,
Like,
I was
what?
also kind of confused about that because I feel like it made Venom lesser for it because it's like it's Matt Gargan for God's sake.
It's gibberish. The only thing what I did like was um later on they did a angle where Eddie Brock he got already sick and then he became
Anti Venom.
anti-Venom.
Hmm.
Yes. And so that way you had Venom as Matt Gargan fighting anti-Venom as Eddie Brock. I'm like, well, you know what? That's interesting. That's taken some kind of turn, and it seems like because anti-Venom would kind of cancel out Venom. And I'm like, all right, that's, there's an angle there. There's a story to be told that you feel has a definite conclusion. If you want to get out of Matt Gargan being Venom, this could be the answer to that. And I don't think that's what the answer was. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how they got the symbiote off Matt Gargan. They probably just half-assed it, if I was to hazard a guess. They just one day were like, he doesn't have it anymore, you know? But no, I've never been a big fan of like anybody else being Venom because, like I said, I don't see the point. It doesn't make any sense. Um, so yeah, I think Venom's pretty overrated.
Well, that leads me to my third one, which is Carnage. And this time I'm not joking.
No, I mean, after what they've done to my boy recently, I'm like, I'm not gonna argue with you too much.
Because it's sort of a similar story, I guess, in terms of where he started to where he is now. Like, he was pretty cool origins, like the whole being in prison with Eddie Brock and then the symbiote sort of reproducing and uh, Cletus Cassidy, you know, bonding with this alien monster, which heightened his like serial killer like prowess, I guess. Like it made him even more deadly and more deranged. And yeah, he was basically just like an agent of chaos. He's like the Joker, basically, in the Marvel universe. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's where he worked best, I think, on that sort of level. But then we've seen him sort of powered up a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Like he did the whole thing where he was going for the dark hold and trying to resurrect like an ancient god as well. And then obviously the stuff with Null where he became like his avatar on Earth and was stealing all these codexes from
Yeah.
other people for reasons I still don't quite understand how it was going to help Noel like
Can I
come to Earth or whatever.
if I could interrupt with a question? This is the second time that we've been, or maybe even the third time, where we've been talking about the symbiotes and the word codexes were used.
Yeah.
What's a codex?
Excellent question.
It's basically like tiny little bit of a symbiote which is left in anyone who's like worn a symbiote, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like I think it's got all the memories of the symbiote and maybe even like the people who wore it as well. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to just be like a little sliver of the symbiote that's left in somebody who's had the symbiote, or any who has had any symbiote attached to them at some point. It
Yeah.
leaves, like, even if you think the symbiote's been taken out of the body, it leaves a little sliver of them behind. So the idea is if Carnage gathers them all together, he'll absorb like the memories and the powers of like the full symbiote, something like that. But again, not very well defined.
Oh God, no, definitely
You
not.
know.
Okay, so John, you mentioned the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that, because the Joker is a character who works best when you don't use him as often.
Yes.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
since the 80s and the 90s and the present up to the present day, Joker has escalated and escalated and escalated. Like, it used to be more like puns, and like there was murders. Like Joker's like first appearance back in the day in the 30s was like murders. So he's always been a murderous character, but like he works best when you don't see him as often. And like lately DC's been having Joker series, like a mini series, and some of them have been good. Like there was one Joker series where actually the main character was Jim Gordon, and the whole thing was like him trying to find Joker, and Joker was kind of like Jaws in in the movie Jaws, where you would see him right before it was too late.
Yeah.
And I agree that that's how Carnage should work. Like that's a character you do not need to keep putting out in front of people. It's more impactful when you go stretches of time without seeing him, and then he appears. Because
Yeah.
I remember, like I said, I remember being a kid in the 90s and Maximum Carnage, and like that was this big storyline, and they even made a fucking Sega Genesis game for Maximum
Yes.
Carnage.
I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love Maximum Carnage. But that's exactly to your point, though. Like that was a big moment that made Carnage seem like a big deal, and it was okay for him to take some time off after that. You didn't need to see Carnage come back 3 weeks later because that doesn't make any sense. And I feel like recently they really have just been ramping it up. You know, the last couple, but both symbiotes really, they've been ramping it up to like a ridiculous degree that they didn't need to. Like, I love Carnage to death, but I don't like any of this stuff. I think it's just way too much. You know, it's it's I feel like they have lost a lot of like the real kind of fun and identity. I say fun when referring to a serial killer, but you know that kind of like character that Cletus Cassidy, that Carnage used to be. Like that's a long jump away from what
Yeah.
he is now.
Well, I mean,
Like
once
we
you
were
get ripped in
saying
half by the Century as well, as that was insane as well.
Yep.
Sorry,
and
John, I cut you off there.
we were saying before as well how like talking about Kitty Pryde and all the different like evolutions and stuff that she's undergone. Like you want to see a character evolve and change, but you still want it to feel like the same character it was to begin with. Like in some way, like it still have that connective tissue, and I don't really see that anymore with Carnage.
No.
Like some of the stuff that's gone on with him is just too far removed.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too. But also, I feel like a guy like Carnage, honestly, that's the kind of guy where like if he never changed a bit, you're like he's still like that character still works.
Yeah,
Like you said, if you just see him sparingly, the point of Carnage is he's a major threat when he turns up. Just by himself, he's a major threat. He doesn't have to change because everybody knows he's a horrible, incredibly powerful psychopath that's really hard to beat. That in itself is a threat, you know, like that you could tell loads of stories. You didn't have to ramp him up into whatever the fuck he is now, you know.
There is this. I talked on this before, and I think it's worth like repeating here because I think this is an opportunity to remind people. I think there is a thing as being too creative or wanting to be too artistic and not having the right medium for it. So like I equate like DC and Marvel to like getting fast food. Like you don't always like I'm not going to McDonald's looking for like a prime rib. I'm going to McDonald's because there's, you know, it's a Whopper. You're not Whopper, that's Burger King. Regardless, the fast food analogy is there. I don't get a lot of fast food. That's an indication. But yeah, so it's like DC and Marvel is like your standby. You go expecting the thing and you want the thing. I'm not coming to be challenged necessarily. And to do like the challenging stuff, you should look more at like Image Comics or other independent publishers where you can be super artistic and such. And I say that from not just the artistic standpoint, but just from the credit standpoint. Because if you do super innovative, interesting stuff with Marvel and DC, as the writer and as the creators and the artist, you do not get to reap the rewards of that. That becomes the property of Disney in the case of Marvel, or the property of Warner Brothers if it's the property is in DC. So like doing all this, like we're going to try to reinvent Carnage is like, you really don't need to. And it's probably better for you as a creative person to not do that. Like take what you want to do with Carnage, slap a new name on that, and take it to fucking Image, and Image will make that book, and you'll get full credit.
Right, but like you said, you really just don't need to do that with Carnage.
No,
there's no need for this at all. Like that character writes itself.
You
know, and they're like, no, he has to be a fucking sorcerer or whatever the fuck. I don't fucking know. It's too much, you know. Can we just say both the symbiotes or just symbiotes in general? Fucking overrated.
Yeah.
So my last one, I don't know how much discussion it's going to spark, but it's John Constantine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just feel like John Constantine is the opposite problem of Carnage in that I feel like nobody does anything different with him. Like he doesn't have his own book for the most part anymore. He gets like miniseries and stuff every now and then. But like, so you'll just be reading a book and it's like, oh, we got some magic nonsense. And then you just hear, hello, mate. And he's smoking a cigarette, acting like a cool guy. And it's like, all right, here's John Constantine again, here to solve the problem by being a dickhead and knowing magic. And I guess that's just like, he's a character that a lot of people are super into. He had his own TV show for a while that was so popular they brought the same actor to play the same character in the CW show. And they also had the movie with Keanu Reeves, but that was an interesting adaptation because they changed a lot of stuff with him. But he's just a character, like, I feel like there's no depth to him aside from British and smoking and knowing magic. And I feel like that's about it when it comes to John Constantine.
I have a question about John Constantine.
Yes.
Could he beat Superman?
He could, because Superman's weak against magic.
So Superman, the most powerful being of all time, could be beaten by this fucking
Yeah, because again, and like the Flash, he has a established weakness.
I don't know how established that is, because neither me or John knew what that weakness was.
Because you guys don't read Superman.
No, why would we? He's really boring. As we've already
you've critiqued a character you know nothing about. You critiqued a character you know nothing about. What you both did was you pulled your pants down and exposed yourself for con men and charlatans.
Oh dear.
It's the best way to make money.
We're supposed to be experts in our field, subject
Look,
matter experts.
Whoa. We can't read all the comics all the time. And there's a
No.
billion Superman comics. And
No,
I don't
but
know
you
which ones
apparently
talk
read
about magic, but it's not any of the ones I've read.
you can apparently read all these shitty Carnage books.
Not all of them, clearly. We stopped when it started getting shitty. Well, I did.
I'm still reading them now.
And you picked him for overrated.
I know. That's because he's fresh in my mind.
Oh, this is fun.
Oh yeah, no, this is a good one. So I don't know.
Constantine, that's a brave choice. I wouldn't have, but is he overrated though? Like
I think
like
he is because he's presented as being like the premier magic user in DC, like on par with Zatanna, or maybe even better than Zatanna because he gets more cameos in other books than she does anymore.
But is this a case of them just like not figuring out how to use other magic characters?
I
You know what I mean?
feel
Like-
like to them he's just like he's the easy identifiable because like I said he's a dickhead who smokes cigarettes and is British.
Yeah, is it just like an easy out for them to like?
I think
again,
it's an easy out.
for DC, they're like, oh, we've once again written ourselves into a corner. I don't know what to do. Oh, I know, John Constantine, done. You know, like
Pretty much.
that's
Because in Batman, they would bring in Zatanna most of the time in Batman because like it's established they kind of had a fling at some point and they can play to that.
yeah.
But most other times it's like let's just bring Constantine in to
What
fix
if-
the problem.
What if they had John Constantine have a fling with Batman?
Well, John Constantine is established as bisexual, so that is more realistic
Yeah.
than you think.
So we could do this.
I think it's also implied that John Constantine fucked King Shark. Yeah, no, I think
Implied.
that's absolutely a thing.
Implied.
Yeah, but so John Constantine is established as bisexual. So yeah, no, him making a move on Batman, I think, is very well established.
And that would be a fun storyline.
Would be.
You'd read that.
I'd read that.
Yeah, so maybe he's not that overrated.
No, he is because he just shows up and is British and smokes cigarettes. They would never do that. They would never have like Batman having a fling with Constantine. They ain't gonna do it.
But that's
They teased him
that's
getting married to Catwoman for like 2 years, and then she left him at the wedding because he was married to the city of Gotham and Vengeance.
That's not illegal. That's not you can't get a marriage certificate for that. I don't think that's legally binding. You know.
Yeah.
But again, like a lot, I feel like a lot of that's just kind of like laziness on the part of the writers. Like,
Yeah, no, it always is. It's easy out.
Yeah.
So I will say, I know that we had some alternates in mind, and we won't go into the depth of them, of course. But Dylan, I know you said you picked a few. Like, who are some people who almost made the cut?
so I have two alternates. Do you want me to say them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we saying them with no discussion, or am I saying them and then you guys are gonna be like, what? Why didn't you say them earlier?
We would have if anything, the discussion will not be long. We'll restrain ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll try to make a point for both of them real quickly. One of them was Cyclops because I feel like that character I feel like Grant Morrison had the perfect way to write Cyclops out of the books and have a fresh new leader, a fresh new start because they've been running that bland Cyclops thing for a while, and instead of that, typically Marvel were like, nope, we're gonna reverse what you did and keep him on in exactly the same way that he is, and then not only did they keep him being a bland motherfucker, but then they made him into this like martyr for mutants and stuff like this. They started adding more stuff on them. Whenever at heart he's just a really bland, boring person. So I feel like he gets overrated as the de facto leader of the X-Men, despite the fact that nobody else has really had a chance to be the leader other than more interesting characters like Storm or stuff like that.
I like
Hard
Cyclops.
disagree. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Cyclops.
You can like him, but he's also like overrated, right?
I don't think he's overrated because like when I think of like an overrated kind of character, I feel like yes, he is used, but I feel like he doesn't get the spotlight so much that when he does, it becomes like it's notable at that point.
They've been using him pretty consistently for a long since he started, and like really that guy, like Mr. Boring.
No, you put him on a team book and you put Kitty Pryde on the team book. Kitty Pryde's gonna get a lot more focus. If you do Wolverine's gonna get a lot more focus. Like I feel like he's used well in the aspect of a team book, even if other writers do not use the rest of the team book well.
Okay. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. Like he's never the star of the show. He's always a supporting player, even if he is like the like captain of the team or whatever. But I think as well, he's like had a pretty good evolution over the years, like in terms of how he started becoming more like hardline militant and like taking more of a Magneto's path than Professor X's for a time. And yeah, so I think I'm not sure because they killed him off at one point and then brought him back, and I'm not sure
Mhm.
they've really done anything too spectacular with him since they brought him back. But
He had a few moments in the Krakoa era. Like I think the two that I remember is like faking his death because it like got out that mutants had figured the resurrection. So when he died publicly, when they
mm,
resurrected him, he created the identity of Captain Krakoa to kind of
yeah,
fill in that spot. I thought that was unique. Yeah, no, I agree on that end. I think like he quit the Quiet Council so that he could lead the X-Men and have an X-Men team like in America and kind of like
mm,
try to build that establishment. Like he's had some good moments. Nothing
yeah,
like
yeah.
super seeking the center of attention, but he's had good moments.
Okay. Well, I think he's boring. Anyway, and then the other person I was gonna say, we mentioned briefly earlier is I think we kind of covered the points a little bit earlier, but the Joker,
Yeah.
because I think the Joker, like you said, is a great character used at the right times, and at some point, maybe like the late '80s, kind of early '90s, they were just like all Joker all the time. He's Batman's main villain. This Joker, 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 blah blah blah, and they've really diluted that character into just a fucking loser, right? Because there's no fun in him anymore. It's just you can guarantee that if somebody's writing a Batman book, here comes the Joker. Again, it's the same thing, and you're kind of diluting that character. In a way, I kind of feel like this about Norman Osborn as well. There was a time where like at some point, like every time there was a new Spider-Man writer, like here they're gonna do a Norman Osborn bit. They have to. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you can just use them at the right points and let it breathe, you know. Um, and so I feel like that way more with the Joker. I feel like just every time somebody has a Batman run, it's like here's the Joker. Oh, he killed some people. I'm like, okay, it's hard to tell a really good story if we've just seen a really good story. Well, not even a really good story, you know what I mean? Just a Joker story, you know? Um, I feel like they need to let him breathe more and they don't.
So I will tell you when it comes to Joker, I think the most harm that was done to him was Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. Because I feel like at that point they stopped treating Joker with any sort of like focus on like the puns aspect of the character or like the crime boss aspect of the character. And then they just started like, I'm an agent of chaos. I'm just a mad serial killer. I'm just a
Yeah,
dog chasing cars. And I
they
feel like that's when he got really
they tried
unbearable.
they tried this like really like he's dark and twisted. And like no, he's a fucking clown.
Hmm.
Right? That's part of it. Like this weird like insanity is fun. Like that was what was fun about him. You know, the unpredictability. Instead, they were like, no, we're gonna make him a serious threat. Like you're fucking it up. Like he already is a threat in his own way. You
Mhm.
know, but I don't think people really capitalize too much on that.
John, did you have any backup characters?
Yes, and funnily enough, related to the Joker, the Batman who laughs.
Oh, I would agree. Fuck that character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Was
I
that Scott
mean,
Snyder?
yes.
Fucking Scott Snyder.
I'll give him credit. Like he looks pretty cool, and I think that's maybe been like a big part of why he became so popular so quickly. Is just like a weird and different looking guy, but yeah, I mean he's just like an old world Bruce Wayne who has been jokerized, and then for some reason he's like traveling the multiverse and ridiculously overpowered and
Agreed.
yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Absolutely agreed. Could not.
Yep.
Scott Snyder also gave, like, to me, did one of the worst Joker storylines in the last few years, which is where Joker got his face cut off by another villain, and then he like stapled and like wore like a strap-on thing to keep it on his face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, it just, to me, it's another like, here's Scott Snyder introducing, well, this is an interesting element. He's not going to know how to fucking finish the story, but here it is. Which is a controversial take, because I got into it with somebody about that, because Scott Snyder just put out a book through Dark Horse called Canary. And I was like, yeah, the first 2 books were great. And then the last issue, I didn't know what the fuck he was trying to do.
I mean, it's good that he sticks to form, though, isn't it?
Yeah, right. He's so consistent with his inability to finish the storyline in a satisfying way.
Yeah. I mean, it would be weird if he did one day just make
Yeah,
it
exactly.
be like, what the fuck?
Is this the same guy? But no, I would agree with Batman Who Laughs. The second I saw him, I was like, oh fuck this. This is stupid. So mine, I feel, is very much in the realm of Wolverine, and it is also a character that I have read a good bit on over the years, over my lifetime. Really, is I think Batman. I think he's progressively gotten more and more inconsistent and overpowered.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, just he's in the main Batman book right now. He's kind of getting the shit kicked out of him, and he has a metal hand. And then in Detective Comics, he's on like a weird spirit quest in a weird magic desert place. And in Batman and Robin, he's like trying to be a good dad to Damian. And then there's a bunch of mini series that he's in, and it's just that Wolverine level of like overexposed, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of consistency in what he's doing.
Right, like none of the 3 seem to relate to each other. And I think part of that as well is like, like we said with other characters, you can totally like advance a character and make them progress and change, but like at some point, if you just make them like fucking totally different from what they're supposed to be, then it's just not fun reading those comics, because you're like, well, this isn't really what this character is like, or this isn't how he acts, or this isn't what he does,
Yeah.
Which I feel like that's probably something like Batman these days, because they're like, again, to your point, where people are always trying to reinvent the wheel, and you're like, Batman's like the easiest guy to write for.
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel with him. He's just a billionaire that dresses up like a bat. Like you can tell these simple stories and not go fucking crazy with them. But people they're trying to be like the seminal Batman writer. They're trying to like make their mark. We definitely talked about this before, where people are trying to go bigger and bigger all the time, and we're like, the best way to do it is to just tell good stories. Just be good at what you do. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Just do a good story, and people will like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this honestly might be their easiest outro that we ever do, and it's just as simple as, if you disagree with any of our picks, go ahead and let us know in the comments. Oh, they're wrong. That's fair.
Yeah, fuck you.
And fuck you. So if you disagree with any of our picks, or you feel like there's a character you feel is even more overrated than ones we've discussed, by all means, let us know in the comments section. As a reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're on Spotify, and if you're listening to us on Spotify, we're on YouTube. So it really depends on like how you prefer to digest your media. But this has been the Smark Avengers talking about overrated characters. Guys, do you have any final remarks that you want to make?
Trying to think of some way of like crowbarring Superman into it again.
Fuck
but I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say fuck Superman.
Fuck off.
You
just
were
like
so,
riling me up, I think, is the issue.
You were doing so well, lovely, composed, serious, lovely outro, and then I'm like, how could I poke?
How can I ruin this?
Yeah, but that's my life.
That's fair. That's fair.
You know.
So, do you guys have any idea what you want to do? I have a suggestion for our next episode, because I've been really excited about it since we made that discovery a couple of weeks ago. And I say a couple of weeks ago because this is in game a couple of weeks ago, but in reality, it was like last week. Um, I would love to try to do the watch along of the Generation X pilot. I am
Okay.
so Dylan, I want to hear your reaction to this so bad.
Okay.
Now, I have the question for you though. I think there's a version with commercials and a version without commercials? Do you have a preference?
Preferably the one without commercials, so we can just watch it straight up.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to see, like, sometimes I just enjoy watching old commercials because I think it's a good time.
I feel like we'll have
So-
enough to laugh at.
Oh, I feel like you would be right. So, folks, tune in next time where we might be watching the Generation X pilot or something along the lines of something were to go horrifically wrong. But I've been Corey, and this has been John Dillon, and we're gonna go ahead and let you escape this madness. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.